Was the Hathras stampede completely avoidable? Take a look at what happened. Earlier this week, 121 people died and several others were injured at a stampede at a religious event in Hathras in Uttar Pradesh. Now, this was an event held by a preacher called Narayan Sakar Vishwa Hari, or Bhole Baba as he was known. Now, unfortunately, most of the fatalities were women and children, and in some cases, 3 generations of one family were wiped out. According to a letter written by the subdivisional magistrate of Hathras, who is Sikandar Rao, narrated the entire chain of events, this is what actually happened. Now, the Bhole Baba, or Narayan Sakar, reached the venue at 12:30 in the afternoon, and the event went on for about an hour. When he left the venue, people started rushing towards him to seek his blessing. Now, we understand also from a report in the Indian Express that people rushed towards his car to collect the dust from his feet and apply it to their forehead. Apparently, this is called Ira Jha because they believe in a superstition that if they gather that dust and put it onto their forehead, that all of their problems will be solved and all their wishes will be granted. Now, a number of people, according to the subdivisional magistrate, who is the official, started standing on the divider on the main GT road and running towards the Baba, and to prevent the crowd from reaching the Baba, his private security and his sevadar began pushing people away, and they fell down. The crowd went out of control and panicked, and to get some relief from this, people ran into the open field nearby, which was slushy because of the rain, and they slipped on a slope and started to fall down. Other people were running over them. The chaos that then continued because it had rained and it was extremely slushy and muddy. More and more people slipped and fell into the drain and died. Apparently, on paper, the administration had given permission for 80,000 people to gather, but 2.5 lakh people gathered instead. The question that we're asking is this: did the administration have any way to know that something like this could have happened, and could they have done anything to avoid this? Now, we must remember we're just coming out of a massive election period, and in the election, the largest possible rallies that were held by the Prime Minister had gatherings of about 80,000 people. So everybody in administration across the country knows that there is a process in place that you have to do when there are large numbers of gatherings coming together, because they've just been through that entire system. Now, let me first take you through what that process is. This is again according to a report in the Indian Express. Now, when someone wants to organize an event with a large number of people, thousands of people, they're required to submit a written application to the subdivisional magistrate, or the SDM. Now, the subdivisional magistrate will then take a look at whether or not this event will affect law and order, what kind of movement will it involve, what kind of people are likely to gather, and where are they likely to come from, and what transport they're going to use. The SDM will write to the local police stations, or the SHOs, the station house officers of the local police stations, and ask them to gather all of this information. The possibility of communal tension, the possibility of caste tension, law and order issues, public cleanliness issues, any of these other problems, and then the police report back to the SDM. The SDM then grants permission with certain conditions. The conditions include entry and exit, ventilation, toilets, water, personnel for crowd control, and the number of personnel it's required or possibly will be required from the police, and whether that police is available and can be assigned to this event. Also, nearby hospitals are normally put on alert and notified about this event, and they're kept on standby so that their doctors are available. In this incident, we know for sure that after this incident took place, the visuals that we looked at, the nearby hospitals had not been notified because doctors were not available. Ambulances was not available. Oxygen apparently was not available. And if it had been available, many of the people who were brought in, who were still alive at that point, would have been saved because they were suffering from respiratory distress. Now, the Baba in question, from what we understand, has a huge following. His followers believe that he's a healer, that he has magical powers, he can grant wishes, and he can heal people. And this sort of thing has gotten him into trouble in the past. According to the Indian Express, in the year 2000, he was arrested because he had forcibly taken away the body of a 16-year-old girl from her family, saying that he could bring her back to life. So this is an individual who was earlier a part of the police, who had left the police, who had been arrested for something like this. And so he would have been on the radar of the police as well. So what were the massive lapses that suggest that the administration in Uttar Pradesh could have avoided this incident and did not do their jobs? To begin with, dishonest organizers. Now, the organizers we know applied for 80,000 people, but 2.5 lakh people showed up. According to NDTV, the police have said that the organizers deliberately underplayed the number of people who were going to come in order to face less restrictions while hosting the event and in order to avoid additional crowd safety measures. Now, here is where the problem is. According to news agency IANS, this is not the first time that these organizers underplayed the number of people who came to their prayer event. Apparently, in May 2022, during COVID, the Bhole Baba had asked for permission for a rally of 50 people in Farrukhabad district, but eventually had 50,000 people there. And so this is something the police would have already known. Point number 2, weak police presence. According to NDTV, there were 70 police officers there to control the crowd. Even if the police were just expecting 80,000 people, as the organizers had told them, that still works out to more than 1,100 people per singular police officer, which means it's impossible to control that crowd if something were to happen. Now, former Uttar Pradesh DGP Vikram Singh has written a column in the Indian Express where he said at such events, the police deployed is actually chargeable to the event managers, that they can actually charge the event organizers the cost of deploying police and deploy more police. But in this particular case, we don't know how much the organizers were charged and why there was such a poor police presence there. Third point, no contingency plan by the police. Now, according to Vikram Singh in his column, he says if there in fact was a crowd of more than 2 lakh who've gathered, it would have taken more than 7 or 8 hours for 2.5 lakh people to gather and to trickle into one place. It couldn't have happened in 10 minutes. And while this was happening in a venue that was right next to the national highway, they would have caused traffic jams because of the influx of people who were coming. And so the control room would have found out about it. And despite finding out about it, there seems to have been no arrangement that was made, even when the Baba was leaving, leading to that tragedy. I just want to point out to you, in contrast, in the city of Mumbai, while the cricket team was doing their victory lap on Marine Drive, they were supposed to start at 5 o'clock in the evening, but then the sheer number of people who showed up actually caused a stampede-like situation. And so the Mumbai police came in, they controlled the crowd, they stopped the traffic on that road, they actually created movement for the crowd, and then 2 hours later, when they got the situation under control, is when they had the event. So it is possible for the police, even after the crowd shows up, to take measures. Now, we understand also that the organizers had their own volunteers who were dressed in white, and in many of the visuals you can see these men wearing white shirts and white pants. They were called apparently Shivam Sevaks. They were present at the event. Apparently they did very little. In fact, they were not helping the police. According to the police, in this quote, it says the crowd running in water and mud-filled fields behind the car was stopped by the organizers with sticks. And due to that pressure, the crowd kept increasing and women and children and men kept getting crushed. Also, apparently, these volunteers were focused more on ensuring that mobile phones and photography was kept at the bare minimum. People were not allowed to take photographs. People were not allowed to make videos of the event. And that is what these volunteers were being used for. The FIR of this event actually says the volunteers, the Sevadars, did not cooperate. In fact, the police present at the spot took the injured to the hospital. There was no cooperation from the Sevadars. Evidence was fabricated by throwing away the belongings and the clothes and the shoes of the injured people from the scene of the incident to minimize what it was going to look like. And this tampering with evidence was actually done by the volunteers or the Sevadars at that event. The fourth massive lapse is there was only a single point of exit. India Today cites the FIR to say that entry and exit was not marked anywhere. There was no emergency route out of the venue. People fell on top of each other like a pack of cards, said one ground reporter. And the only singular exit was blocked by multiple decorative structures. The district's internal security system also mandated CCTVs that were not placed at that event. An eyewitness told Quint that people didn't move from the entrance, so other people couldn't come out, and there was some confusion about a wire that had broken and people died, and so there was more confusion that had been created. Point number 5, the land was not prepared for an influx of such a large number of people. Now, we already know that it was humid and that caused a lot of suffocation, but it had also recently rained. And this was in a field, an agricultural field, so it had turned into slush with mud. The devotees were gathered in a makeshift tent that was pitched in the middle of that field, and the uneven surface actually made it more and more difficult to walk. Besides which, people bending down to pick up the mud that the preacher had walked on actually created more chaos, and more people tripped and fell on them. India Today has apparently looked at an open source satellite imagery to find out that many avoidable issues were ignored by the organizers. There were embankments and a large slope next to the venue that should have ideally been leveled out, that had not been leveled out. Also, as we know, when we go to large events, when it's muddy, a thick carpet is actually put out so people can walk on that carpet, and they're not actually in the slushy ground because it causes people to slip and to fall. And the slipping and the falling is what caused a lot of the chaos. And finally, there was no medical care. The nearby hospitals were hard-pressed to handle the influx of the people who were coming in. Several doctors were reportedly not at work on that day. The healthcare facility did not have oxygen cylinders to support the people suffering from respiratory illnesses. Several of the family members have told the press that when they brought their loved ones to the hospital, they were alive and breathing, but there was no assistance available to them. So what action has taken place up till now? 6 people, according to the Uttar Pradesh police, have been arrested so far, including 2 women. And they are apparently volunteers or sevadars. The FIR names the Mukhya Sevadar, Dev Prakash Mudkar, who is currently absconding. And the police have offered a reward of 1 lakh rupees for information regarding his arrest. The Baba himself has not been mentioned in the FIR. The Aligarh Division Inspector General of Police has actually said, and I'm quoting, I am not saying he's guilty or not. I'm saying the investigation is underway. We will get evidence and we will proceed accordingly. We understand also that the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Mr. Yogi Adityanath, who visited the location, held a press conference after that where he said the same thing, that everybody who is guilty will be brought to task, when he was asked about the Baba not being mentioned in the FIR. The Uttar Pradesh governor has also constituted a 3-member judicial inquiry commission under the chairmanship of a retired judge, but we don't know when the deadline for this report is. In the meantime, there is a PIL in the Supreme Court which has asked for the appointment of a former Supreme Court judge onto a panel to investigate these lapses, and also asked for guidelines for all states and union territories to avoid stampedes. Fundamentally, it boils down to this. There is a process in place that the entire administration seems to have ignored. These are powerful people who have organized this event. There's obviously money involved. Why has the administration ignored the process and not followed the process like they would normally do? Things like fire safety and crowd control are there for a reason. And when these processes are not followed, people die. But at the end of the day, when the people who are dying are poor and they don't have access to media, they don't have access to social media, their deaths go unnoticed and they become just mere numbers. The investigation needs to not only look into the people who organized the event, but the people within the administration and the police who did not do their jobs.